a talented female master's degree holder, famous for her filial piety, suddenly committed the shocking act of murdering her own biological father. Not stopping there, she even planned to eliminate her mother and younger sister. But what chilled everyone even more was her cold-blooded testimony in court. He deserved to die. So, what turned a model daughter into a cold-blooded killer? What is the real mystery behind this Christmas Eve massacre? Let's dive deep into the details to uncover the truth behind this thrilling case. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any other exciting videos. The story begins in the final days of the year 2021, when the cold rain and chilling winds enveloped the city of Taichung. In that gloomy atmosphere, the city police station suddenly received a call from a young girl named Jiang Ting. She reported that her father, Mr. Jiang Qiang, had mysteriously disappeared without leaving any trace. Upon receiving the news, the police immediately launched an investigation to search for Mr. Jiang Qiang's whereabouts. According to the initial information gathered, before his disappearance, he had met with his eldest daughter, Zhang Yue, at school. Seeing this as a key clue in the case, the police tried to contact the eldest daughter to clarify the situation and verify information about Zhang Qiang. However, all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. Despite repeatedly calling and searching, the police received no response from Zhang Yue. They couldn't even determine her whereabouts at that time. After learning that Mr. Jiang had met his daughter at the school where he worked as a security guard, the police extracted and carefully analyzed every frame from the security camera to find clues. The images from the security camera showed that on the day of the disappearance, after finishing his shift, Mr. Zhang Qiang left his workplace and went with his eldest daughter, Zhang Yue, and her boyfriend to the school grounds. However, from that moment, all traces of him disappeared from the security camera system. What was even more noteworthy was that, according to the camera data, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend didn't leave the school until 2 a.m. the next day. So, what really happened during the time between the end of the work shift and the early morning the next day? In order to clarify the case, the police gathered personal information about Zhang Qiang. He was a mild-mannered, middle-aged man working as a security guard at a local school. His family was always known as a warm and happy one, with no conflicts or any unusual circumstances. Among his two daughters, Zhang Yue, his eldest, was the pride of the entire family. She not only excelled academically, but also got accepted into a prestigious school while still in high school. Wanting their daughter to have a bright future, Mr. and Mrs. Zhang Qiang saved every penny to support her education. They cut back on unnecessary expenses, gave up personal pleasures like travel or parties, and even restricted regular shopping. Their life became so simple that it was almost austere, but they never complained or regretted, because for them, as long as their daughter could study properly, every sacrifice was worth it. Zhang Yue understood very well the hardships her parents endured to provide for her education. From a young age, she was a well-behaved, thoughtful child with a strong will to succeed. She didn't want to disappoint her parents, and she especially didn't want their sacrifices to go to waste, so she always worked hard in her studies. When she entered university, she realized that the costs of living and studying were a significant burden on her family. Therefore, Zhang Yue didn't allow herself to just sit back and rely on her parents. Instead, she chose to work part-time while studying to help cover her living expenses and reduce the financial pressure on her family. Finally, after years of diligent study and constant effort, Zhang Yue completed her master's degree with excellent results, making not only herself, but her entire family proud. On the day she received her diploma, her parents, especially her father Zhang Qiang, couldn't hide their joy and pride. That was a memorable moment in the Zhang family's life when their continuous efforts were finally rewarded. However, while the family was enjoying this great joy, suddenly, Mr. Jiang disappeared. When investigating the relationships surrounding Zhang Qiang, the police also found that he had no conflicts with any family members. The strange disappearance of Zhang Qiang occurring right after he appeared with his daughter and her boyfriend at the school, made the police reconsider all possibilities related to the case. On the day Mr. Zhang Qiang went missing, after finishing work, he called his youngest daughter, Zhang Ting, to inform her that he would be meeting Zhang Ye in the evening and would be home late. He also reminded his wife and daughter to go to bed early. However, after that phone call, no one received any further news from him. The police immediately launched an investigation and extracted images from the security cameras. From the surveillance video, they confirmed that in the afternoon, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend entered the school grounds together. However, what raised suspicion was that at midnight, both of them left on their motorcycle. One detail that particularly caught the attention of the police was that there was a large bag behind Zhang Yue's boyfriend's motorcycle, which seemed to contain something heavy. It didn't take long for the police to trace the path of the motorcycle that Zhang Yue and her boyfriend used on the night of Mr. Zhang Qiang's disappearance. Eventually, they discovered a suspicious area deep in the forest where there was a small stream. There, they found Mr. Zhang Qiang's body. From the evidence collected, the police quickly determined that Mr. Zhang Qiang's death was directly linked to Zhang Yue and her boyfriend. Believing this to be a premeditated murder, the authorities immediately planned to surround and raid the couple's residence. They didn't want to leave any signs that would give the two suspects a chance to escape or destroy evidence, so the operation was swift, with close coordination among multiple investigative units. After capturing the two suspects, the police conducted a thorough search of their residence. As expected, the investigation team found a blood-stained hammer hastily hidden in a corner of the apartment. Next to it was a blood-soaked set of clothes, which seemed to have been scrubbed clean, but still bore traces. These pieces of evidence immediately became crucial in convicting the two suspects, as the hammer perfectly matched the fatal wound on Mr. Zhang Qiang's body, proving it to be the murder weapon. However, what surprised the police even more was Zhang Yue and her boyfriend's attitude when they were arrested. Instead of panicking, being fearful, or trying to deny the crime like most murderers, both remained incredibly calm, almost unaffected by the police's presence. They showed no fear or resistance, even maintaining a disturbingly indifferent expression. But when the police presented undeniable evidence, from the murder weapon to the blood-stained clothes and crime scene forensic results, everything began to change. In the interrogation room, Zhang Yue screamed in desperation he could have continued supporting me, but he cruelly abandoned me. I sacrificed so many years, don't I deserve to be rewarded? He deserved to die. Instead of receiving sympathy, her words only made the atmosphere in the room even more tense. Zhang Yue's selfishness made all the investigators present feel enraged. They couldn't believe that a renowned master's degree holder could utter such words about her own father. Under the pressure of the investigation, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend had no choice but to confess the whole truth. Zhang Yue confessed that after graduating with a master's degree, driven by her intense passion for studying, she expressed her desire to go to the USA to continue her research. Despite the family's financial struggles, thinking of the bright future his daughter could have after studying abroad, Mr. Zhang Qiang decided to spend all of their remaining savings, even borrowing money from friends, to fund her education. However, things didn't go as planned. Initially, Zhang Yue was supposed to complete her studies in 3 years, but after 5 years, she still hadn't earned her degree. By this time, Mr. Zhang Qiang had aged, and his health was no longer as good as before. After many years of struggling, the family could no longer afford to continue funding their daughter's education. Realizing that her family's support had run out, Zhang Yue tried to figure out a way to manage on her own. She applied for a student loan at her school, hoping to continue her studies, but unfortunately, her application was rejected. With no other options, Zhang Yue was forced to accept the truth that she could no longer stay in the USA. After 5 tumultuous years, she reluctantly gave up her dream of studying abroad and returned home. However, when she arrived back in Taichung, instead of going home to live with her parents, Zhang Yue made a puzzling decision. Zhang Yue chose to live with the boyfriend she had brought back from abroad. Even though both Zhang Yue and her boyfriend held master's degrees, they had no intention of working to earn money. Instead of being independent, both chose to rely on the money that Mr. Zhang Qiang had worked so hard to earn to cover their daily expenses. Time passed, and the financial burden increasingly weighed on the elderly man. Mr. Zhang Qiang could no longer endure. Wanting a better future for his daughter, he repeatedly advised Zhang Yue to find a stable job and stand on her own feet. Moreover, he repeatedly asked his daughter to end her relationship with her parasite boyfriend. However, contrary to his expectations, Zhang Yue did not understand her father's concerns. Instead of listening, she became defiant. The meetings between father and daughter became increasingly tense, with constant arguments, and every conversation ended in a deadlock, with neither side yielding. Therefore, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend promised each other that they would kill Zhang Qiang at all costs. After thoroughly planning, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend began closely tracking Mr. Zhang's schedule. The two tried to memorize the route Mr. Zhang frequently took to and from work. They knew that to execute their plan perfectly, they needed to choose a secluded spot to avoid being detected. Thus, both decided to ambush him on the road they knew Mr. Zhang would take after work. On the night of the murder, Zhang Yue proactively called her father, saying she wanted to meet him to discuss an important matter. But in reality, that was just an excuse to delay him and make Mr. Zhang come home later than usual. At that time, the area around them was completely deserted, making it the perfect opportunity to act without leaving any trace. Near midnight, the figure of Mr. Zhang appeared from afar on his familiar motorcycle. Just as expected, the street was completely silent, with no cars or people in sight. As Mr. Zhang's motorcycle approached, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend immediately rushed into the middle of the road, waving to signal him. Seeing his daughter waiting for him, Mr. Zhang did not suspect anything, stopped his bike, and thought she truly had something important to discuss. But before he could say anything, a strong blow to the back of his head knocked him unconscious on the spot. Witnessing this, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend were not frightened. Instead, they picked him up, placed him on the bike, and drove him back to the school. After returning to the school, both took the hammer and repeatedly struck the victim's head until he was completely motionless, with no signs of life. Once they were certain that Mr. Zhang had died, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend did not show any fear. They calmly wiped the blood off their hands, looked around to ensure no one was watching, and then proceeded with the next step in their plan disposing of the body. They began lifting Mr. Jiang's body, but due to its weight, moving it proved to be very difficult. After some struggling, they finally managed to drag the body onto the motorcycle seat. Next, the couple adjusted the body so that it looked like someone sitting back against the rear, hoping that if anyone saw from afar, they wouldn't notice anything unusual. Once arranged, one of them sat in front to drive, the other sat behind holding the body, and they started the bike to leave the crime scene. At this point, the only thought in their minds was to erase all traces and dispose of the body in the most desolate location possible. Their destination was a remote area deep in the mountains, where the terrain was rugged and the trees dense. But what was even more chilling was that very night, after disposing of their father's body, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend did not stop there. They turned around and drove back to her mother's house, with the horrifying intention of wiping out the entire family to ensure that no one could expose their crime. Fortunately, on the night of the crime, Mr. Zhang Qiang's wife and youngest daughter had carefully locked their room door before going to bed. Because of this, they managed to escape a horrific tragedy that their own relatives had planned. Unable to execute their plan as intended, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend left in the night, taking with them their horrifying secret. However, a crime cannot be hidden forever. With undeniable evidence from the police, the two eventually had to face the legal consequences of their actions. At the trial, the prosecutor presented in detail the entire process of the crime committed by Zhang Yue and her boyfriend, exposing every cruel action of the couple. The collected evidence showed that not only did they act coldly and ruthlessly throughout the crime, but after carrying it out, they also attempted to stage a false crime scene to mislead the investigation and escape legal punishment. All these signs indicated that this was not a random act or one committed in a moment of rage, but a premeditated murder, carefully planned in advance. Faced with the strong accusations from the prosecution, the defense lawyer tried to argue for Zhang Yue, claiming that she had been seduced and manipulated by her boyfriend. The defense even suggested that she might have been threatened and coerced into participating in the crime. According to the lawyer's perspective, Zhang Yue was not the mastermind, but rather a victim controlled psychologically, forced to follow her boyfriend's plan. However, all the evidence collected by the investigation completely disproved this defense. Testimonies, text messages, surveillance footage, and traces at the crime scene all pointed to the fact that Zhang Yue was not only an accomplice, but also played a key role in planning and carrying out the murder. She was the one who actively participated and even directly carried out the crime. Throughout the trial, Zhang Yue said only one sentence that made everyone in the room furious he deserved to die. With that one statement, the judge made the final ruling. As a result, Zhang Yue and her boyfriend were sentenced to life imprisonment for premeditated murder. After the case was made public, it immediately shocked the public, becoming a topic of conversation not only domestically but also spreading across various media outlets. The community was left stunned and horrified by a family tragedy, where a father who had spent his life raising his children was ultimately killed by his own daughter, whom he had loved and hoped for. Zhang Yue was once the pride of the family, a smart, talented girl with a solid educational background. After years of study, she graduated with a master's degree, holding a prestigious diploma that could have been a springboard for her to build a strong career and a brighter future. But life did not go as she had hoped. Continuous failures in her studies and career gradually led her into a state of frustration, discontent, and emotional instability. Instead of reflecting on herself and seeking ways to change, Zhang Yue chose to blame her father for all the difficulties she faced in life. She saw her father as an authoritarian figure, blocking her path, someone who placed too many expectations on her, but did not offer help when she stumbled. These negative thoughts grew larger and accumulated over time, turning into simmering resentment, and eventually, one day, it exploded into a horrific crime. The resentment grew until she lost her rationality, ultimately killing the father who had sacrificed everything for her. Thank you for taking the time to follow this story. See you in the next video.